Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions, the worlds of TV, film, digital media, news, lifestyle, music, sports, everything really depending on the guest. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest is an actor, storyteller. He also has a podcast. We're with Billy Bryk. Billy, welcome to Popternative, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Thank you.
And I have interviewed your brother, Dempsey Bryk.
Yes, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, who is the only guest to have done an interview from a bathtub.
Yeah.
Which was a very good talking point, the kind of icebreaker of the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds about like him. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was
So for you specifically, kind of like the acting stuff, I mean, you know, people who know your brother, you know, your brother's been acting as well. You know what I mean? Was that like, what were some of the reasons and things that kind of led you to acting and storytelling? I'm sure your brother maybe had a big, like a part of it as well, right, Billy?
Yeah. So our dad is an actor. So we grew up with like a dad as an actor. We love movies. And then I always wanted to be a filmmaker. And Dempsey didn't even necessarily want to be an actor until kind of later on in high school. But then he went to go to theater school and I went to go to film school. And I was watching an interview for the movie Mid-90s when Jonah Hill directed it. And he was just talking about, you like it?
Well, no, the reason I'm saying that blows my mind because, continue what you're saying, I always bring that up. I saw an interview he did about how he never did directing before and how much he loved it.
Mm-hmm. So he was talking about how he wanted to be a filmmaker and he went to like the best film school in the world by going to work with all these amazing directors for the course of like 17 years or whatever before deciding he was going to be a filmmaker. And I was in film school and I wasn't really loving it. And I just decided like, I should just go try and do that and try and act. And I loved acting. And then I was like, I'll learn how to do it through there. And then that's kind of why I started acting professionally, at least.
No, that just blew my mind a little bit because I always bring up mid-90s because I always just bring that up because I love the idea of like, he was an actor who wasn't really known for like the filmmaking stuff. And then he ended up doing that and kind of wearing many hats. How important is it for Billy Bryk to wear many hats in the entertainment industry?
It's important. I got so many hats, man. I got like three hats.
You got a lot of hats.
Yeah. Acting, I want to be a writer, filmmaker, and I do like a podcast stuff too, so I guess comedy related, but it's all in the same.
Yes, Lackluster, right?
Yeah.
With Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah. So Finn and I have that podcast, and we do it for Headgum, which is this podcast network by these College Humor alumni, Jake and Amir, who are like probably my favorite comedians ever, and same with Finn. And we just kind of like fell into that because like Finn and I actually became friends through we met on the street randomly in Kensington Market, and I was like, hey man, I know that you really like Jake and Amir because I had seen him like post about it or something or comment on one of their posts, and he was like, oh dude, yeah, like I love Jake and Amir. And we talked for like 5 minutes, and then he obviously had to go. He was doing some event or something. And then I was like, man, that's a cool guy. And then about a year and a bit later, I was in the new Ghostbusters movie, just like a small part. And I sat down at lunch my first day, and Finn sat beside me and was like, hey man, I'm Finn. Do I know you from somewhere? And I was like, yeah, I don't know if you remember this. We met for like 5 minutes on the street like a while ago. And he's like, dude, you're the Jake and Amir kid. And then from there on, we just like quoted Jake and Amir all the time. And we just discovered we had like the same sense of humor, the same taste in movies.
And you're like best buds now.
Yeah, he's the man. And the podcast was just kind of born out of that. We both loved the same comedy and the same movies. So to get an opportunity to talk about movies with him on their network was awesome.
Can't even imagine just kind of like just everything he's kind of doing, like from the promo kind of like work, like the work vibe thing. Like it's just like, you know, there was the stuff with It Chapter 2, and then there was Stranger Things, and there's Ghostbusters, and now Lackluster. You know what I mean? Just like so much stuff, like time management awards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. Do you, with the podcast, is it one of those things where like, what's the preparation going into that? With like, you have ideas where we're going to talk about. Is it a lot off the cuff, or is there a lot of preparation from you and Finn with that?
Yeah. It's mostly off the cuff. I'd say we text each other like the night before and be like, what do you want to watch? And then we'll just kind of pick a movie to watch and then try not to talk about it until we record. And it's kind of like, I guess a big part of it is, just seeing where the conversation goes. And by the end of the podcast, we do this segment where we get a random generator, and we
Yeah.
get two actors and a movie title, and we pitch each other this fake movie. And it's kind of this fun little improv game where we're just trying to make each other laugh, essentially, with insane movie pitches.
Damn. I mentioned this on the top before we kind of started. I mean, for anyone who follows you on Instagram, they'll see like how passionate you are for film. Like film, you even said, is one of your first loves and everything. It's pretty crazy to me though, like at a young age, how like much knowledge you have of film. You know what I mean? Obviously, growing up with a family of actors and everything will help, but like, do you do like a lot of research? Do you just watch a lot of movies, Billy? Is that basically what it is?
I think I just watched a lot of movies growing up. I think that there was a lot of times in high school where I just would be in my house on a Saturday night watching a movie, and not even in like a sad way or anything, just in like I really love watching movies. And I think, I mean, there's a ton of movies that I haven't seen, and sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll like bring up all these films that I'm like, like I know I should be watching, but I'm not. But it's always been something that that's kind of my first love, I guess.
Because I always find it hard. So when people ask me like what my favorite movie is, it's hard sometimes to narrow it down. So I have two that I know all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite movie or favorite two movies on top of your head?
I do have a favorite movie, but I'm curious to see what your favorite movie is first, or your favorite two.
Yeah. Okay. School of Rock and Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay, those are great. We're gonna get along.
Dude, School of Rock is that movie where I don't find anything wrong with that movie. Like I love every single part of that movie, and it's very rare. Like there's nothing I don't like about that movie.
I think that might be the greatest kids movie of all time.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's the perfect family movie. Literally, I can watch that at any time. It's just as funny now as it was when I was like 8 years old watching it. Jack Black is the best.
Yeah, I know. I just love that movie. Jack Black even says that like that's the movie. Like he's the we know Jack Black's done so many things, right? He says like in interviews that's like the movie he's the most proud of.
Yeah, I don't blame him. That's the perfect like vehicle for him as well.
Yeah, and Napoleon Dynamite, Napoleon Dynamite is just so different and so funny and just like a lot going on. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah. I love that. What is your favorite movie?
So if I had to pick one, I would say it's Bottle Rocket, which is Wes Anderson's first movie, and that's my favorite movie ever. That's the movie that I feel like if I wish I could have made any movie ever, it would be that movie, because it's like everything that I kind of want to be able to make in a movie, where I don't know. It's something about it. It's so funny to me. I love people's first movies too. Like I love directors' first movies and seeing what they do their first time around. And that's like with mid-90s with that Big Jonah Hill's first. I think it's such a special thing to see what somebody does with their first movie. And a lot of my favorite movies happen to be really early in people's careers. But yeah, Bottle Rocket's hilarious. Owen Wilson wrote it with Wes Anderson, and it's like his first movie that he ever acted in. Luke Wilson's in it, and it's the best. I think it's so funny.
I really enjoy a lot. Like, so yeah, Owen Wilson is just both the Wilson brothers. Like Luke Wilson just did Stargirl, and I interviewed a lot of people on that. It's just crazy, like to me, how unbelievable, how many amazing projects both of them have kind of worked in. It's crazy. It's funny. We're talking about like movies. You mentioned Ghostbusters and everything. I mean, your brother has been working in. It's funny because your brother is in The Silence on Netflix, and I freaking love that movie, man. I think it's one of those things where that movie kind of came out, and it's kind of similar to like A Quiet Place. I was talking to Dempsey about that. But like, I love that movie. What have you kind of noticed about the horror genre? Is it not blowing your mind how big the horror genre has become? It's crazy.
It's It's insane. I'm actually really happy. I'm not a big fan of horror movies. Like, uh, I haven't been a fan for very long. I kind of just recently have been getting more into them. I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that I'm really happy it seems like the slasher movie is making a comeback, because I feel like that was kind of dead for a while. This movie Freaky just came out,
Yeah.
and they're the new Halloween movies, and they're making another Scream movie, and I'm really excited for that kind of to come back. But the horror, like it's giant. I can't believe it. It feels like every year one of the biggest movies is some like independent horror film.
I know, it's crazy. No, but I just like the fact that there's more ways to scare people. Like I don't feel like you just need to depend on like the cheap jump scare and the gore. I mean, I always say this on my podcast, like I'm a big fan of like the dinner party gone wrong kind of situation, and there's actually a lot of movies that have that kind of thing I just said. So that's actually that's a horror genre on its own. It's like a subgenre, dinner party gone wrong, where you're introduced to like 8 or 9 characters, Billy. They show up at a dinner party and just stuff starts to go south, and it's just kind of like that person said something, that person's acting weird, that person reacted strange. It just kind of becomes like a head game thing. Kind of like Knives Out, like the Knives Out kind of formula. Like Knives Out's not a horror movie, but that formula of like the mystery and like different characters, that I think is the perfect like horror film of our generation. And I think about it from the industry perspective, you're spreading the love too, right? Like ensemble casts, like everyone's looking for work all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Knives Out was so great. That was one of my favorite movies of the past few years. Just such a fun thing. And yeah, what you're saying with the ensemble, like every character in that is great. Everybody's really funny. Everybody has stuff to do. And yeah, most of the fun is like piecing together the mystery of it. But the thing that's like I find with a lot of horror films is they set up the mystery really well, but if they don't stick the landing, the whole movie just becomes like, was that even worth watching?
Yes. Well, endings of I feel like that is the hardest thing about being a filmmaker, because and I find it's funny, I always ask, like, I don't want to put them on the spot, but when I interview like directors and writers of movies on my show, like I will ask them if that would like if the ending of that movie that we see, it was the original ending, because a lot of the times endings change or they have different things. I can't even imagine, because that's kind of like the thing people talk about. There are so many movies I've watched that it's like unbelievable movie until the last like 6 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough though, right? Like you're wearing the film, you do the film stuff. Like it's tough, right? Like you have to like pick and choose at one point too, like what you put in, how you kind of close the story. Like I can't even imagine the pressure.
I feel like sometimes it might even be best if you come up with the ending of a movie last and then kind of try and reverse engineer it so it gets you there in an interesting way. Because I think a lot of the problems with certain horror films or just any mystery films is that they set up they're like purposely trying to mislead you in every direction, and then they reveal at the end that there's something that they're like, oh, surprise, but it wasn't really alluded to, or just makes the whole thing feel a little bit dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there's a great, like I was just rewatched Scream, and kind of all the Scream movies, they have that whodunit, who's killing everybody.
Oh yeah.
And I think the endings on most of those are awesome, especially the first one.
What I like about the Scream is I got to chat with Jamie Kennedy on my show about this. And he played Randy, and he was just saying like everyone knew that when they signed on for Scream, it was going to be something special. Like he's like, no one in the room didn't know that it was going to be big. Like it wasn't even out. They didn't even like, they were filming it and they were like, it's going to be big. Like that is a cool feeling I find from when you're making something. Like there's no way that Finn, like I'm sure they all knew Stranger Things was going to be the hit it was. Like there's got to be the way when they're filming it, you know what I mean? There's that tingle you kind of get when you're making something, right? Where you kind of have this idea.
Something special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that he told me he was like really proud of it no matter what. And he's like, man, I really hope people like this like as much as I liked it to make. But I don't know if he was expecting it to be the phenomenon that it became.
Yeah, but it's funny, like you mentioned how Finn and Stranger Things, but like another show, I think like The Quarantine and like was a real difference maker for it. But I remember interviewing people from Outer Banks on Netflix, and that one, I'm pretty sure like they knew there was something special, but like that kind of hit like really, really quick. Like that was insane. Like that show came out on a Friday, and on like Tuesday, it was like I'm talking to the cast members, and it hasn't even been a week, and it's like the biggest show on the planet. Like it's crazy. Do you find it crazy like how quick it is? Like on net, like with these streaming services, how quick something can catch on?
I think that's like the big difference maker is that it literally can be in 2-3 days you're on the biggest show in the planet and you just had no idea because everybody's watching it. And yeah, it was the perfect thing where everybody was locked down, everybody was looking for something to watch, and then they had this like really fun kind of escape show to watch. And then just it changed the game with streaming services for sure. Same with like Tiger King. I don't know if Tiger King was before or after.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I interviewed Saf from Tiger King. And I did that the same day I interviewed your brother. I remember that for some reason. Because I try to line up my interviews.
Yeah.
And I remember interviewing Dempsey and then I interviewed Saf. So I remember telling him, I'm like, I'm bathtub chats and Tiger King later. What a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it makes you wonder if those shows would have been popular if it wasn't for the lockdown, right? Like, I know you don't want to think about that stuff, right? Because you just want to be like, listen, it happened. We're happy about it, right? But doesn't it make you think, right?
Yeah, like if it was, or even if it was just released like weekly instead of all at once, because that whole binge-worthy like phenomenon, especially during the lockdown, if they had been released on like a typical network that was releasing them one a week, like it probably wouldn't have had the same effect.
Outer Banks, I feel like would have been, because just Outer Banks kind of took the new age kind of OC Dawson's Creek feel, which is like a formula that I think is an amazing formula. So I think that would have been okay. But I have this theory that I don't like, to each their own, right? But like I don't think Tiger King would have been as big. Like I think that was like a pandemic show. I think no, just because of the fact that a lot of shows are coming out like that, and I think it got released like right when the pandemic started, man. Like day one of lockdown, it was out. So it got that from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I just who knows like how big each of them would have been, but I felt kind of in direct contradiction to what I just said. As far as stuff releasing weekly, I was watching The Last Dance throughout all of that, like when it was airing during lockdown. And that, like, not to say kept me going, but I just had something to look forward to every single week.
Did that not motivate? If a show wouldn't motivate, like that show was just motivation, was it not?
Yeah, I loved it. I every day I would watch it and be like, I need a rival. I need an Isaiah Thomas. I need someone who's going to push me to be better. And then I would wait like 2 days and be like, I don't need anything. I just need a nap.
I want you to plug some of your projects that you have coming up that you've been working on. But before that, I just want to know, I want to pick your brain a little bit. There's always going to be kind of trends and learning experiences in filmmaking. There's always going to be things that people do that works for them. What have you kind of learned so far as kind of a filmmaker, storyteller? And what are some trends you've kind of noticed in the industry?
Trends in the industry?
Yeah.
Well, I think the main thing that kind of I've noticed from a personal standpoint is you just have to make something that is like really unique to you and something that's true to you. And I think that a lot of people try and like reverse engineer something to be successful based on what they think people want to watch. And sometimes that works, but I think mostly the stuff that people will really connect with is something that seems so specific and then yet it's universal because like there's something thematically that just strikes a chord with everybody. So I would say don't worry. If you're trying to make a film, try and make a film that only you could make, because why not? Like,
no, absolutely. No, for sure. That's a really good one. Billy, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really enjoyed chatting with you, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Plug away, man. Where can people follow you on social media, and let us know about some projects we could be looking out for? I know you mentioned Ghostbusters, and I feel like Ghostbusters is one of those movies where like we want it. You know what I mean? We don't know when we're getting it because of COVID and everything, but we want that movie. You know what I mean?
I can't wait to see it. I just play a small part in it, but I am so excited to see how the. But other than that, I'm I'm doing a show called Winona Earp, which is coming back in the new year.
Yep.
I'm on that. And if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I'm at Tryon Gosling.
What a handle.
Thanks. And if you want to listen to my podcast with Finn, it's Lackluster Video, which is on the HeadGum Podcast Network.
Amazing. Well, Billy, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Billy Bryk and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.